What's up, Lake County? Mr. Ligler from Eustis High School here, bringing you another episode of Lake County In Depth. Today we're talking with Mr. Doug Edwards. Doug, how you doing today?
Mike, I'm doing great. How are you?
Man, I'm doing okay. It's nice that we can actually bring some of this information to the county about people who live here so they can see that people have had so many different experiences, and we get to talk a little bit about the trip you took recently to Ireland.
That's right. And we've done a lot of things together for the last 4 years, 2 years, really in depth with certain programs. So I really appreciate you interviewing me here.
Yeah, it's great.
Ireland was a great trip. It was one of those lifetime experiences, and one that I didn't even see coming till about a month out.
So how did you even? Was it something you and your wife decided to do on your own, or how'd you go on this trip? How did it all happen?
Actually, I've done student ministries for a long time, and so the students grow up after a while, and they actually get jobs and stuff like that. So this one, pharmacy student, and he was at an auction, and he put some money in for this place in Ireland, and it sleeps 8 people, and so his parents said, "Hey, we're going with our son. Why don't you guys go with us?" And we said, "Well, we'll figure that out, see if we can figure that out." And literally about a month in, we realized, hey, we're going to Ireland. So
wow.
So it was just a few months and talking, and 1 month and going, this is actually happening.
That's awesome. Ireland. I've never actually been across the pond, but I've seen lots of.
It's a long swim.
It is a long swim. And so you went over to Ireland, and so the first stop was Dublin.
Yeah.
And it wasn't any special time of year there.
Yeah, it was. It's St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, well, okay.
And of course, that's St. Patrick, and I didn't know anything about him. I guess if I got up on my Catholic history, I'd know that St. Patrick, basically, he's known for getting all the snakes out of Ireland. It was a special miracle by St. Patrick, and that's what he's known for. And that's what all
Patrick's gets rid of snakes.
Got rid of snakes. And you know what?
I like it.
There's only one warm month, and I'm going, why would snakes live here? But I don't know. All I know is that's what he's famous for.
For getting snakes out of Ireland. That's
it.
That's interesting.
And they have a big parade, the whole bit. But here's what I found out about the parade. I started talking to people on the streets going to the parade, and a lot of them are really dressed up. The more dressed up you are, the more you're probably not from Ireland.
Oh.
You're probably a guest. They said, why would you go to St. Patrick's Day? No, that's the wrong time to go. It's terrible.
Getting the wrong experience of Ireland in Dublin.
And so probably there are less Irish people there than there are people from other countries and other areas.
During the St. Patrick's Day celebration.
Well, and it's kind of like some of our celebrations in Orlando. There's a lot of them we don't go to because we know that they're just going to be too crowded.
You mean Disney?
Disney might be one of those things. Universal,
those things.
Some of those things.
Now, there's so much stuff that happens over there that's just part of not just Ireland, but people from other places. So
yeah.
Well, you're saying there's people from other places, and people from other places go there. And I know one of the things we want to get into during this interview is that people go there to film.
Yes.
And it's a big part of knowing where to film things to make it seem real and be real.
Mm-hmm.
And for future filmmakers, we want them to know that you need to travel. You need to travel. You need to see these places. And so you ended up on this trip by kind of happenstance.
Yes.
Where you just happened upon it and you got to go on this amazing trip and see stuff where films were made. And the fact that I heard that there was a 9/11 memorial there in Ireland.
Yeah, we didn't expect that.
It was confusing to me. And then
it was to me too when I got there. And we actually were in this little town where this 9/11 memorial is. And the place we stayed, 3.5 hours, I believe it was southeast of Dublin. We're pretty much in the south part on the Bay area where there's a fort called Fort James. We actually living on that property the time we were there, and it looks over one of the places that was built to protect the inlet from the Atlantic. And on the other side is one of the star forts don't know what a star fort was, but it's literally in the shape of a star. And that was called Charles Fort. So they're across from each other. So two places to protect ships coming in, right, the bay and that sort of thing. But this is Kinsale. And so tiny place, which is where, he won the place for us to stay. Gorgeous place. And while we were on this tour to these other places, which we'll talk about later, they said, oh, by the way, there's a 9/11 memorial up in down in Kinsale, we went, what? Yeah, 9/11, yeah. And so we inquired about it, and the last day we're there, actually, we went to see it. And there was a nurse from Ireland who actually spent 30 years in New York City as a nurse and fell in love with the sacrifices of the New York City Fire Department. Just the firemen, and she became close friends with the chaplain for the fire department there. And so she was in shock when 343 of them died in trying to save people in the 9/11 Twin Towers disaster.
Now, what was that lady's name?
Her name was Kathleen Kate Murphy.
Oh, wow.
I had to practice it. Kathleen Kate Murphy. And the ironic thing is, on the 10-year memorial, they had a big memorial service for the first time. She had been working on it since she got back. They planted 343 trees. They put a plaque for each fireman, one per tree. And people have come from all over the world, and especially the States, and come in and put American flags or put pictures of these guys. One was from Claremont, Florida.
Oh, wow.
I don't have his name with me at this point, but you can look that up, which fireman was from Claremont. Now, I don't know if that meant he went and became a New York City fireman, but his hometown was Claremont, Florida. But you'll see those names on there. And it was a piece of property up on a knoll, on a hill, pretty close to being by itself. And and there's a place you'll see in the video, the actual memorial monument that they placed there. And it will keep growing, even though it's made of like mortar and steel, that sort of thing. People keep coming and on those, as well as on the memorial, putting flowers, putting pictures, putting shirts that were from that day of the burned and torn of those firemen, different things like that, and new ones as well. But the 10th anniversary, when they had several religious services up there at the memorial, Kathleen was not able to attend. She died 2 months before.
Oh, wow.
Which was so interesting, and they planted a tree for her, of course, and that sort of thing.
It must be beautiful, just to look at it.
It's beautiful, and it's very Irish. I mean, from the standpoint of you don't get a lot of sun up there. Now, we expected like 3 or 4 out of 8 days. It looked like we were going to have like 4 sunny days. We got 1, and that was at Dingle Peninsula, which we'll talk about. But it's a real Irish day, and really a real New York day. You don't get many sunny days in New York.
No.
We're from Florida. What I found out is north of Florida does not get a lot of sun.
No, we don't.
All the sun is us, us and down. So
yeah, so where you were staying, you said on property there was an old fort.
Yeah.
Now,
you have to walk up the hill for it, but it's
Well, of course they'd be on a hill so they can see further.
Absolutely.
So in Ireland, I'm sure there's tons of old ruins of forts and castles, and which would be prime filming locations.
Yes, yeah.
And that's kind of what we're saying is you can walk around and see different places all in one place.
Yes, yeah. And there's castles all over. And in fact, I want to make sure I get all these right. You got the 2 forts. You got James Fort that we saw. Charles Fort, we did not go across to see. You had to make an effort to drive over there and walk into it or whatever, and we had other tours to go to. But you could see it, and so we took pictures and video across at it. And didn't realize that star forts were a very rare thing, but were from a particular era. You'll have to look up the era. I don't remember.
The era for having a fort shaped like a star.
Exactly. And then we did go there was a snowy day. We were coming back from Dublin, I think it was, and it's near Cork. Cork is one of the larger, there's only 3 large cities, by the way, in the Republic of Ireland, and that is Dublin, Cork, and can't even think
Gonna
of
blank
the.
on that one.
The I think it's the capital.
Okay.
Actually,
Well,
is that one.
but the most well known is Dublin.
Right.
Which is interesting.
Right,
There's some
there's
states
three.
like that too.
Yeah, but anyway, so on the way back, we've got the snowy castle was the Rock of Kinsale, and you'll see that in the video. And they were all closed, though. We found out that the day
you
we
couldn't
saw
go
the
in.
castles because it was St. Patrick's weekend, and so they are closed. All the major stuff like that is closed all the way through Monday. Caleb Hirsch, I called Caleb today, said, hey, can I use your name? Yep, you use my name. So Caleb Hirsch brought his drone,
Yeah.
and he had practiced quite a bit because drones are hard to fly, hard to really use.
Well, you said it was windy and snowing and
All the above. He did an incredible job because I've tried to use a drone before, and if you're in the movie industry, you're using those things, you're going to want a guy that's really done a lot of practice
Yeah.
and has a really expensive one. And this was not even the most expensive. He went from I tried a $100 one, pretty big one, but even on a non-windy day, they're hard to fly.
Yep.
Then he went to a $350 one. This is before we ever got to Ireland. And I said, how'd you end up with this $2,000 drone?
Wow.
And he said, well, I'd gone through those levels and found I still wasn't getting the quality of movie because a lot of times the camera is already built into the drone. And he said, and I could not get the control. He said, I had to finally bite the bullet and go up to that $2,000 drone. And listen, that's a cheap drone, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
You can go $5,000, $10,000. You can go
I've seen
about
$40,000
You can
ones.
go as expensive as you want to go to get those drones to do what you want to do. So I'm over there and I'm struggling to adapt. It's cold, man, and it's snowing. I got long johns on. We're layered up. We know how,
Yeah.
so we're like 6 layers in, and we're at this one castle, and the snow is there, and the wind is blowing, and Caleb's dad was one of my volunteers for years, and he is the #1 snowball expert. So we're throwing snowballs here at the castle.
Nice.
And so the one thing I'm inspired to do is never have a castle in a real northern climate unless it feels like Florida inside. Oh, who did Braveheart?
Mel Gibson.
Mel Gibson was inspired by one of the castles there in Ireland. You can look him up; it'll tell you which castle. And you look at that thing, and it's one of the ones that was not kept up well, but
No.
was wearing and it was perfect for the scenes that he was shooting it with, the war that was going on and different things. And it's a movie maker's paradise. But the reason, you want to go on into Dingle and some of those and more?
you got to travel to this movie maker's paradise,
yeah.
and we want to hear more about seeing the other locations. And now we have film companies hauling entire crews with all their equipment up to these locations and out on the
From
islands.
other nations and us from the United States. These guys, of course, Star Wars has made a lot of money, so they got a lot of money, and they know they're going to make more money. And so Star Wars is, but there are many, many movies made here before. If you ever go to these locations in Dingle Peninsula, there's places that you look like you're on another planet. I mean, just being there, not trying to shoot it in a particular direction or whatever. You walk into certain cliffs, you walk into certain terrain, and it looks like, where am I? Where did I fly in from here?
So without having to create these other worlds, they exist here in one place.
Yeah, and the place that impressed me, now I was not able to go to it. I looked at it later, but we're here at Dingle. It is so vast, and it's a part of a place called the Ring of Kerry. Kerry,
Right.
Ring of Kerry, and it covers quite a bit of terrain of this section. And this is just a small section of the island of Ireland, okay? But it's vast when you're talking about movie making and the different terrains. And so we've got, they are not only going to Scalig Michael's Island, which is 7 miles off the coastline where we were.
That was a mouthful. You got that?
Yeah, I got that in, didn't I?
Yeah.
And so, and it's where they have certain bird habitats and different things like that. But there were these monks, and the 1160s or something like that, 1100s, they were running from persecution. They literally found this island. They made it a livable habitat. They created on here, and you'll see why in Star Wars uses their habitats and recreates their habitats on the inland near a place called Three Sisters Peaks, which is incredibly, which we did see and took some video of, should be in the footage, part of the inland area. But you're 7 miles out, a perfect place to hide because nobody really wants to go there.
No.
It's sheer rock, and they have created steps, a stairway, several stairways probably, from the bottom where the ocean area is all the way to the top, where they've created these beehive huts out of rock, completely created by gravity and rock. There's no
No mortar.
no mortar, there's no mud, there's no anything but just the rock. And
Almost like an igloo would.
right,
Ice. Okay.
except
It's
they
a rock.
literally, instead of an igloo, they look like beehives.
Oh, wow.
And there's multiples of them. And there's a couple of them on the inland that they showed us how they were built and things like that, and they reconstructed them there. I mean,
So it's a perfect place to mock
hide.
up the Jedi Order.
exactly.
Where they would hide.
Right,
And hide their treasures.
right, and when you see, I can't remember the name of the character, but where Luke comes in to train her, and she's on
Right.
that island. That's the island.
Yeah.
And when she comes in to start to hit that one rock,
Mm-hmm.
and she stops, that's the rock. It's there. I
It's
mean,
still
that was not something they created. That was a rock that was there, and they used because they went, oh,
Yeah.
this is just too good to be true.
Saw
You
it
know?
and they're like, "This, we are using this."
That's right.
So when we watch Star Wars, if fishing's such a big industry, how do we not see any fishing boats in any of these shots?
Great thing. And so I'm on this tour of Dingle, and so I'm starting to ask the tour guide these questions that are not in his script. And so I said, well, tell me about this. And he said, well, here's the interesting thing. He said, there were helicopters, and if you go look at any of the other footage, because you can find the footage on them creating the thing.
Oh, yeah.
And there are helicopters hovering over the inland part here, but also, those different, that island in particularly. But they're fishermen fishing because this is their living.
Yeah.
And so the Star Wars guys obviously a little bit cocky or whatever, going, we're Star Wars and we've done all this, and so they go to them. We want all you fishermen to get off the water until we're finished shooting this thing. They've been there for 2 years, by the way, and so then there's so many months left or something like that, and they're going, you guys need to get out of the water. This is our living. We're not getting out of the water, and they're going, oh, you don't understand. This is a really important movie, and you're messing up the scenes.
This is our living.
This is our living.
Yeah.
And so they said, well, we'll meet you at the pub tonight. We'll talk about it. And so what they said was pay $1,000 per registered fisherman. And he said, well, the interesting thing was there's only really about 500 registered fishermen in the area. But by that morning when the lawyer and the accountant showed up, there were 5,000.
Of course there were.
People from the area. And I don't know if they paid the 500 or the 5,000, but these guys were going, what? We can't pay. Well, they can pay that many. And they paid them for each day they were off the water, which ended up being quite a few weeks. And what they did was they made an account for that little town there in the Dingle Peninsula. And to this day, the fishermen and their families draw from that account because obviously there were millions of dollars that are in that account for the days that
so
they were.
they had to, if they were slowing the economy, they did their part to keep the economy going.
Exactly.
And that's
And somebody
very
told them
noble.
later, they said, don't feel bad for these guys. They are making so much money that what they ended up paying you guys is not a dent in it. So I thought that was very unique.
It is. And
Yeah.
so Dingle Peninsula sounds like an amazing place.
It is an amazing place. And if you go through, you'll look, there's a list of movies made in this area. Star Wars is one of them. Cliffs of Moher, which is Moher, is a little bit another location, but I think it's
You
still in
mentioned
the Ring
Harry
of
Potter
Kerry.
was filmed there.
Right, Cliffs of Moher is where Harry Potter was filmed. Part of it. If you the scene where Harry is taken by the wizard to a rock, and you stand and you're looking basically into the
Looking
Cliffs
at
of
the
Moher.
cliffs. Okay.
And
I
there's
think
a
that's where they're
particular
trying to
cave.
find the locket.
Yes.
Okay.
And that is a cave. It's the actual cave. And the rock is an actual rock that is looking in there. And when we were standing up on the cliffs, and you couldn't get down. You'd have to go in a boat. And by the way, that day there was not as much water as there is in the scene. That was definitely how do you say it, CGI? Is that what it is?
I'm sure.
Yeah. They had to go
I'm sure
in.
the
They had
water
to
was
create the
CGI
water
just to keep the actors safe.
Exactly. You would not want to be on that rock in the type of storm that they were there on, and But these are magnificent places. They're places like it wouldn't matter if you knew what you're doing or not. You'd say, I'm choosing that place.
Well, I think even I had read that some of the Princess Bride was even shot there.
Princess Bride was shot there, and one of the castles. And so, the list goes on and on and on. And, you hear about places like this, but when you see them, your whole perspective of why is a lot different than you began with. And that's the great thing about travel. That's why movie makers, if they're young, I've taken students from middle school to college on all kinds of trips. We've been in all kinds of different parts of the world. Something I never thought I would do, taking a bunch of people, but that has been part of my life. Mm-hmm. And so to go on this, and one place I wanted, and I'd been to Europe, but my wife hadn't. I'd taken her to the drudges of third world, and we'd stayed in some really bad places, and she'd gotten sick a couple of times, different things like that. But there were beautiful places too. Yeah. But the type of work we did was very difficult.
Now, we're not saying that all filmmakers have to go to Europe to film.
No.
There are so many movies that have been shot here in even Lake County.
Oh, yeah.
But the biggest
down the street from us.
Yeah.
We're talking about
yeah,
Jodie Foster was shooting what was the name of that movie? You knew the name of it.
Oh, Jeepers Creepers.
Jeepers Creepers, which was like 3 blocks down from where I live.
Yeah, right down the road here.
Exactly.
But it's what we're trying to drive home is that if you're trying to find a place to film, mm-hmm. you need to go out and look for it.
Oh, yeah.
And you got to go to these amazing places and see where some of the biggest blockbusters were filmed.
Absolutely.
And it's all about location.
It is. It is. And here's what they have to decide. Is it going to be cheaper for me to do CGI, or is it going to be, am I saying the right thing,
yeah,
CGI? Okay. Yeah. And I've been around it, some of these things kind of fly out, and I go, did I say the right thing? So, or is it cheaper to actually go on location? And I got a feeling that if you do the dollar for dollar, they're finding that some of this was cheaper to go on location mm-hmm. and shoot. And still they got to do some CGI with it. And
it really puts the actors more into it to be able to physically be there rather than having to react to tennis balls in different locations.
The one thing I have found is the United States, if it's affordable, really there's you can almost shoot anything in the world that you want to shoot right here in the United States.
Well, a lot of that's happening in Atlanta right now.
Yep, Atlanta. Tell me a little bit about Atlanta, because I'm interested in that as well, and I've spent a lot of time in Atlanta.
Well, Marvel Studios has built their home there.
There you go.
And they keep erecting sound stages and making more. They got the big tax break to go there. I know the most recent Pitch Perfect movie mm-hmm. simulated all these different parts of the world: Italy, France, Rome. And they did it all in Atlanta.
Yes.
They drove around and found that spot where they could turn it into Italy mm-hmm. and used green screen or sound stages to make stuff happen. And what my hope is that eventually the industry is going to come back to Florida.
Yeah.
You even said it earlier, we have the sunshine. We have the know-how. We have the people here. Mm-hmm. We have the people that can help the industry. And we have the amount of sunshine they're going to need, especially if that bill passes.
You're going to get more sunny days. So you have those places, you have the Keys, you have certain hilly and rocky areas. The mountains of Florida are here in Lake County.
They are.
And it is amazing. If you ever go to the top of Sugarloaf Mountain, you can see all the way to Orlando on a clear day.
Right,
you can see the skyline, absolutely.
I actually take my student drivers up there and I stop the car and pull over and go, now just look. It's
amazing. It's beyond amazing.
Yeah, and there's so many different places to film here in our backyard. It's all about what you need. And exactly. I think that's, it's great to travel places, but I really feel like you can create what you want to create. Like you just said, wait for the right day, wait for the right time, and you can film it here.
Well, and we're able to do that more now because of the way, when we started a lot of the stuff that we started, the students I worked with in Lake County, who became industry people, which is DJ Verkuyk, Brad Verkuyk, got Matt Ferguson, and all these were Eustis High School students, by the way, I'm naming right now.
Oh, that's-
Eustis High School, Matt Ferguson, a lot of commercials that you'll see, especially of Asheville at one time. Matt was played Florida State University football, FSU, but he also was a marketing major and now is with Moher and Associates, one of the greatest commercial agencies, marketing agencies in the United States. Got his glass office up there, literally in Charlotte. Michael Helms, one of the top video producers and shooters for Spectrum.
Yep.
Hope I didn't raise you up there too much, Michael. But anyway, and he also edits for us. But all these guys came out of here. Roland Verkuyk, who's done a lot of live staging and audio work, visual work, that sort of thing, right here out of Eustis High School. And those are just naming some of the guys here. And those aren't even all the biggest ones. We've got guys that I wish I could think of their names right now, but they've been in the movie industry.
Oh yeah, I mean
so,
it's and a lot
from
of those,
Eustis High.
Yeah, and a lot of those people, look at Florida and go, why don't we get the tax break to film there?
Right.
And it may be coming from what I hear.
Yeah.
And we do want to bring stuff home and keep it in our backyard.
Yeah.
Atlanta can't be the only place in the South that gets to make movies.
No.
We want to do them here.
Yeah.
Well, Doug, thanks so much for the interview and your time. And you guys, if you can check out Doug on Youth Worker on Fire, his podcasts, and you can see a lot of the people that he's talked about and talk to some of our students here at Eustis High School, and just check him out. It's a good watch. There's tons of information, and we're all here about making Lake County a better place. And just, it's neat to see what's in your own backyard.